Well, absolutely, Naledi. It's been absolutely horrendous news coming from the two countries in light of the very terrible earthquakes that really left a trail of destruction and a massive destruction of the infrastructure. And so many people, of course, it's been quite interesting to see very miraculous stories with some people found in the rubble. But joining us now is the Syrian head of mission here in South Africa, Mariam. So thank you so much indeed for your time, Mariam. I suppose the very first question is, how bad is the situation from the Syrian side?
Actually, it's very bad. As you can imagine, a 7.7 magnitude earthquake. What is going to do? On Monday, in the early morning, people were sleeping in their houses, and suddenly they got stuck and distracted by this horrific earthquake. And after that, people, hundreds of people lost their lives, as you know, thousands of injuries. And until now, until today, some people are still under the rubbles. In Syria, it destroyed many buildings. Other buildings have been cracked, and people, even now, to make it worse, it's very cold, snowing, raining, and people in that time, some of them try to go out of their places, but it's very cold for them. So even for the safety measures, it was very difficult for them to follow.
And you can just look at me, Mariam, and I would imagine that it's a very precarious situation. For some years now, you've had a war, sanctions as well. But what's your appeal to the international community? Are you calling perhaps for these sanctions to be set aside to allow for the humanitarian aid?
Sure. The sanctions makes everything more difficult. So for Syrians, it's not only now. It's very difficult for because of the earthquake, but as sanctions goes on since long time, it hardens the situation. It makes the humanitarian aids to come to Syria more difficult. Practically, it's very difficult because of the lack of the machineries, the heavy machineries. People are trying to dig by their bare hands. They don't have the machineries, they don't have enough oil to run even the emergency cars. So it's really difficult, and we really appeal to the international community to have a look and to have a heart in order to see what the real cause of that. They need to lift the sanctions, and we need everyone to involve in that and to call upon that.
And unfortunately, the death toll continues to rise. So far, the conservative estimates, what are you getting from Syria?
It's about 1,000 casualties, and it's counting. Because as I told you, until now, because of the lack of everything, of the most needed tools in order to rescue the people under the rubbles, there is lack of that. So they are still trying to give the help whatever they can do.
And just in terms of the Syrian authorities' intervention, we've seen Turkey, for example, declaring a state of emergency in those areas that are affected. Are we likely to see a similar move, precipitated in Syria?
Actually, immediately after the earthquake, there was an emergency cabinet being held in order to give responsibilities for each ministries there in Syria. But in Syria, unfortunately, we don't have the luxurious to have this statement of emergency, because we already in a very difficult situation. So it was I can say it's a crisis inside a crisis. So it's very hard, devastating, but it makes it worse than before. So people in Syria, they are suffering since long time. And now this earthquake, the natural disaster, it's just cap it all.
It certainly does sound like a double whammy, but you have friends like South Africa, where recently we saw the Deputy Minister of International Relations meeting with President Bashar al-Assad, so you can certainly count on South Africa. What's your appeal to countries like South Africa?
We hope from South Africa to have a look into the situation in their eyes and in their hearts, to help all Syrians without any discrimination against any here or there, and to be. I mean, South Africa is a friendly country, and we count on South Africa all the time. We consider South Africa as a very close friend, and as you said, the Deputy Minister went to Syria, and she was well received by the President, by most of the government cabinet. So we really we have high expectation from South Africa.
High expectation, but also you do have the condolence book for anyone who's keen to come and write the messages.
Sure. Yeah, we have book of condolences. It's just words. It's not going to rescue the people, but at least it shows the sympathy.
And just before I let you go, Mariam, how are you going to make sure that the aid is able to reach people, whether it's rebel-controlled areas or areas that are still under government?
From the government side, it's for sure it's going to reach people, because government, at the end, every Syrian person and everyone is there in Syria are the responsibility of the government of Syria, and Syria is stuck with that fact. So Syria is cooperating with the UN organization, with Red Cross, with Red Crescent in Syria, in order to make sure that every single penny or help to go directly to the people in most need for that.
And just before I let you go, Mariam, I do understand you guys have activated a bank account for anyone to donate stuff, to send money in terms of making sure that the humanitarian aid is able to trickle into Syria. We set an account. It's in FMB, and the number is 624-3635-9683. And even if it's very less money, maybe for the person it's just 1 or 5 or 10 or 100 rands, but for the people in need, for the people under the rubble, under the rain, homeless became homeless, it would make a big difference. All right. Mariam, thank you so much indeed. Of course, Naledi, that's the head of the Syrian mission based here in South Africa, really painting a very grim picture about the current situation in Syria in light of that horrific and the most horrendous earthquake that has left massive damage in terms of the infrastructure. And of course, this has been compounded by the fact that this is a country that has been facing the civil war. So this has really exacerbated an already very untenable situation.